Top of the morning. How the heck are you? A couple minutes past the hour. We're Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming at millerandmoulton.com. That's where you can go and answer the poll question. Which of the two teams playing at 7 o'clock tonight do you take more seriously, the Bills or the Titans, as a true contender? They are both undefeated, after all. Both made the playoffs last year. And you can watch us, if you're not already, on the Miller and Moulton Twitch.tv channel. Pat Kerwin to join us in about 25 minutes. It's a pleasure to catch back up with Rashad Phillips, basketball analyst, both college and pro. He of SportsTalk2319.com, SportsTalk2319.com, and follow Rashad on Twitter at RP3Natural. Rashad, hope you and your family have been well during these times. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. We're doing okay. We really are. Hope you are too.
I know that we're going to get into the Lakers, but I'm telling folks right now, if you are an NBA guy and you're an NBA, I mean, a little bit geeked out on draft stuff, all you got to do is follow Rashad on Twitter or go to his website, sporttalk2319.com, because he is breaking down this draft six ways but sideways. I told him on the phone, he does all the work so I don't have to. I can spend an hour online and find out everything I need to know about everybody that's being drafted. But Rashad, I laughed. Someone retweeted something you said like 2 years on our show the other day. I mean, they dig hard to find things. You had said a long time ago that stars didn't want to go play with LeBron, that he was having trouble getting guys in LA. And then they made the big deal for AD, and you said this was the right deal. They didn't want to retweet that one where you talked about what happened. But can you just kind of talk about the LeBron James journey with the Lakers to a championship?
Yeah, just looking at the landscape of the NBA, it was obvious that, it seemed like other stars had huddled up and said, "Hey guys, we're not going to go play with LeBron and help him build his legacy." That's just the way it looked objectively. And when he got to the Lakers, you could see that when Kawhi was up for his free agency deal, or when he left, that everybody was, pegging him as going to the Lakers, and Paul George going to the Lakers, and guys were going opposite of that. So, just watching that and seeing that the Lakers were kind of in a rock and a hard place. They were desperate to get another superstar, preferably a younger one, to coexist with LeBron. And luckily they got Anthony Davis. And from there, I remember saying that the Lakers had just bought themselves a championship by bringing Anthony Davis to LA. And that's what we've witnessed so far. But again, I just think that the players, the superstar players, are kind of at that point where LeBron has worn out his welcome as far as being a great player. And these guys want their chance to shine now, but LeBron looks like he still has a little bit of his prime left. So it's a little bit of tug of war going on.
Rashad, I thought it was a perfect storm in that, and I had said, for whatever it's worth, I mean, who the heck am I? But before this season started, and Mark can back me up, I said this will be the last great year for LeBron, that LeBron was going to be highly motivated. He got hurt, which was going to actually work to his advantage. He little less wear and tear on his tires. They had a bad year, missed the playoffs. LeBron actually needed it. He had played it so much basketball for so long that he probably needed it. And I actually thought even that the pandemic, in a strange way, it's like, you know what? When you're 35, this might not be the worst thing in the world. A little less wear and tear on your tires, and you could ease your way back into it. Those 8 games were basically exhibition games for him and them. That in a way, I thought this worked perfectly. But now, how long of a shelf life do you think this group has? I mean, in theory, AD could opt out in a year.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. For one thing, I believe that this NBA season there was 2 NBA seasons in one. Obviously, going into the season before the pandemic, I think everybody was kind of even. And then once that break happened, it was kind of a second season. And on top of that second season, it was very untraditional in regards to there was no home court advantage, there was no away games, it was more like a giant AAU tournament. Given LeBron's age, that 4 or 5 months off really gave him time to rejuvenate, sit back, analyze things and how it would play out. And it really played into the Lakers' favor. A lot of, I've heard a lot of people on other platforms say that everybody got the same amount of time, but not everybody was in year 17 of their career. So LeBron definitely benefited from that. And I take my hat off to what he was able to do. Use those first 8 games, like you said, as kind of a tune-up, and to just kind of gel with his teammates. And it was really a perfect storm for the Lakers. The Clippers couldn't do their job, and Boston and Toronto couldn't do theirs on the other end, and the Lakers just kind of handled their business.
Well, then that gets us to the Miami Heat, Rashad. My guess is that you would want to be on the floor with a Jimmy Butler. The type of guy, how hard you work and practice and believe in the craft, that I would think Jimmy Butler's your kind of guy. But what did Jimmy Butler, what was he able to get out of Bam and Dragic that maybe we didn't expect? Because in other places, guys didn't gravitate towards Jimmy. And it certainly seemed that in Miami, whether it was before the bubble or after the bubble, but certainly in the bubble, they all gravitated towards him. And no one, David and I thought maybe they could get a run to, if everything broke right, they could get to the conference finals. But no one had them going to the NBA finals. What was it about what Butler and Spoelstra did in this bubble to turn a Heat team around from average to pretty damn good?
Well, I think it starts at top. With Miami, with Pat Riley and what he's been able to instill and build that infrastructure there. I believe the Miami Heat are kind of building what the San Antonio Spurs have built over the years with the scouting department. The development starts from the top on down, and they've been able to build this this kind of this synergy amongst each other and developing players, adopting the younger guys, allowing them to grow, drafting well. And then when you look at the coach and Coach Spo, he's one of the best, if not the best coach in the game and what he gets out of his players. You trickle that down to Jimmy Butler, who's had an up and down career as far as going to different teams, because you have different ways to lead. Some people lead by their voice. Some people lead by their body language. Some people lead by example of doing it. Some people lead by both ways. Jimmy Butler's leadership isn't for everybody, but it's still leadership. He was able to inject that entire locker room with his passion, and not only that, but his obsession to always want to do better. And I think it just rubbed off on those young, impressionable guys like Hero, Bam, Kendrick Nunn, and you just fall in suit. And let's give credit to Udonis Haslem as well, a person who's played in the league for 17 years as well. His leadership and what the Heat culture is all about. I was in a locker room with Miami when they came to Orlando, and you can just see from top to bottom how well-oiled that team was. And I wasn't surprised that they were able to adjust so well in the bubble because they locked in.
Rashad, could you talk a little bit about, to me, I find it fascinating that Udonis Haslem is brought up so often by so many with the Heat organization and by the Heat players. I mean, this is a 40-year-old guy who can't play anymore. I mean, he can't. But he's kept around because he is universally respected. And, Rashad, we've always been told that, a player will listen to somebody if they have something to offer. But, you could see where a young player might look at Udonis and maybe go, oh, shut up, old man. I mean, come on. You can't play anymore. Give me a break. And yet, for whatever reason, it's exactly the opposite, where literally the great players on the team will listen to the old guy who can't play anymore, who's kept in uniform because, well, he's not yet ready to be an assistant coach, even though he essentially is.
Right. It's very unique. And first of all, UD has so much skin in the game that, the entire league respects his grind and what he's been able to accomplish. He's the ultimate utility guy. He wasn't the highest jumper, the greatest shooter, the best ball handler, the best passer. But what UD has always been able to do is lead with his hard work, come to work with his hard hat and his lunch pail. And that's why he's been able to solidify himself as a Miami great. And those players in that locker room, when he speaks, everybody's quiet, including Coach Spo. There's certain players that just have this aura about them and how they carry themselves that you automatically just respect them and give them the floor. And that's who UD is. And he was so instrumental in that Miami run and that bubble. He kept those young guys focused. They listened to him. And I won't be surprised when I don't think he's going to hang it up no time soon. I think he's going to play 2 or 3 more years. And then obviously he'll be in management in Miami, but he's a Miami Heat legend.
That is exactly right, Rashad. He is a Miami Heat legend. And there is not one Heat person that would ever dispute those words. Fan, player, front office guy.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the bubble, the one thing we all saw there is after the Lakers won, you could read Danny Green's lips. We're effing free. You talk to these guys. You know so many of them, Rashad. Just any stories of life in the bubble of just how annoyed these guys were with it. And I get they're well-paid athletes, but come on, this was months inside of a bubble, without families, without the things that, and people try to give pro athletes a hard time for the luxuries they get, but when you're making millions of dollars and young, you live a certain way. They had all of that cut off. Anything you've got from the bubble that you'll remember that players that you talked about during this time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked to a few players, and what was the common denominator is just the solitude of it, just being isolated, and a lot of players kind of rediscovered themselves in the bubble, and it was a good thing. I think sometimes just as humans, as people, is that the best moments for us and when we find ourselves is in a empty room. And I think a lot of guys dug deep into their souls to find out who they really were. And I believe that the bubble was more therapeutic than people wanted to acknowledge at the time. And I think that's what Danny Green was kind of letting out after they won. And, being in there, what the world was facing at the time with social injustices, the pandemic, to be able to lock in and do your job and come out victorious was just, it couldn't have been scripted any better than that.
Well, and I thought we've seen in both the hockey and basketball playoffs that if you go on a deep run, and in Miami's case in basketball and Dallas's case in hockey, you went on the deepest run possible only to come up short, that it was very emotional. Spo broke down in the post-game presser, that to be that isolated, to sacrifice that much, being away from your friends and family, to be that alone and sacrifice that much, but that also you could tell there was a specialness about those 3 months. This is like being on the deserted island, if you will.
Yeah.
And you can't wait to get back to civilization, but yet there was something about that deserted island that is unique. You'll never have it again. And it was special. And you could see it and hear it with Spo afterwards, that it's like they could go to the finals next year with this same group and it won't be like this.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It was just one of those A funny story. When I was overseas, we had to do this preseason. We had to do this boot camp where they locked us away. We had to, for like 2 weeks, just us and the team just getting to know each other before the season started. And it was probably the worst, best experience that I ever had. And I really believe that the bubble was that for a lot of players and coaches. And staff members just being locked away and not being able to really have any contact with the outside world physically, and to lock in on your craft. It's just something that's great and horrible about it at the same time, that you just appreciate that journey even more. And I think that's what Coach Spo was kind of letting out. Like, look, man, this was the ultimate experience for all of us as people, and to be able to survive it, and be, one of the last people standing. Because you got to look at it, guys. It was the progress of elimination. It was like one team was gone, and then the next day or a few weeks later, another team was gone. It was like, but hotels became quieter and quieter. And then it was just the last two teams. So you just got to put yourself in that space, and to be able to really capture the moments of those guys.
You've been talking a lot about Chauncey Billups, not only as a possible coach, but his playing ability. What team should be hiring Chauncey to be a head coach right now?
I think the Indiana Pacers should be the number one destination for Chauncey Billups, just because we're in a new climate of an era of basketball where I believe that point guards, and not only just point guards, but great point guards that were leaders when they were playing, are the best hires for these NBA teams now. Chauncey possesses a vision. He understands the room. He knows people, and if you sit down and talk to Chauncey, he's like a computer, man. Like, he just maps out everything. And when you look at what he's been able to accomplish as a player, I don't think Chauncey gets enough credit for the winner that he was, the resiliency that he put up. He's a champion. He's one of the few players to go to 7 straight conference finals. I mean, we praise LeBron, which we rightfully so, but when you look down the totem pole of players that's been able to go to 7 straight conference finals, it's LeBron James and maybe 2 or 3 other guys, and then Chauncey Billups. So the track record's there. The relationship portion of that is there. And I believe the NBA, the Indiana Pacers, should hire Chauncey Billups as their next head coach.
Rashad, my final question is, when do you think that the NBA will start back up again? We're both hockey and basketball fans here, and we got to think that, if I'm an owner, there's no reason to do this again until I can at least have the 3/4 of an arena full here. I mean, so when do you think that the NBA regular season would start? We both think it's sometime after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think we may have to. Here's my idea. I'll answer that question, then I'll give you my idea. I think it's going to be somewhere, after the Super Bowl. I think right after February, we may have another summer season. But here's my idea. I think the NBA should create I think they should create like 4 bubbles. You pick 4 states like Orlando, California, Texas, and Chicago, and you create isolated bubbles for the teams. You split them up, let them play in isolated bubbles, and then you swap them out, and they go from bubble to bubble until they figure this thing out. That's just an idea that I had. It's almost kind of expanding on what we just seen with the solo bubble. You create 4 bubbles in different parts of the country. You send, 6 to 7 teams to each bubble, let them play each other, and then you rotate bubbles. That's what I think they should do if they can't find a way to get the fans in the stadiums.
And obviously, as we've said many a time, the NBA TV deal, much different than the NHL. They are not as reliant upon fans as hockey would be. And that's why bubbles for the NBA are still a possibility for the 2020-2021 season. He is Rashad Phillips from Sports Talk 2319 on Twitter, RP3 Natural, and he's been a great guest of the show for quite a while. Rashad, we always enjoy the time. Have a great day, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Talk soon.